We are at Star Wars Celebration, and I am very honored to introduce you to our next two guests. This is Lorne, and this is Steve. Guys, can you please introduce yourselves for those that don't know?
Well, my name's Steve Gawley, and I worked on the first trilogy along with Lorne Peterson. And Lorne.
And we both became supervisors in the model shop. And I think we worked on six of them, and Steve worked almost that many, and I worked on all the Indiana Jones films, although much more on the first few and then less on the last ones. But yep, we were there at the very, very beginning.
Yeah, the early days. Were you in Van Nuys?
Yeah.
In the earliest days?
Yes. Steve was in his late 20s, and I was just barely 30, I think.
Jeez. So all of those original TIE fighters, the Millennium Falcon, the X-Wings, all of those tiny models, well, the Death Star,
they weren't so tiny, really. You're right, there was only 7 model makers, and so all of those models, all the X-Wings, TIE fighters, Y-Wings.
Well, the Star Destroyer was tiny. It was only 3 feet long.
Right.
Well,
but it looked huge.
Right.
You made tiny like this.
Yeah. You needed them big enough to kind of blow them up, right?
Yeah.
In front of the blue screen.
Yeah. Little things don't look good, but they blow them up.
Right. Yeah, so you think there's 7 crew members that did all of the models for A New Hope?
Yeah.
And how many people worked on Revenge of the Sith?
There were about 102 model makers in the model shop.
Jeez.
I'm not sure if every single moment they were all working on.
It was big.
It was big.
Project.
It was really big.
Now I know just from watching the bonus material of the DVDs, the Blu-rays, things took a really giant leap when you worked on Empire Strikes Back. With the massive Star Destroyers, the Super Star Destroyers, all those tiny fiber optics.
Yeah.
You remember being in there and putting all of those in one at a time?
Yes. That was. I think I calculated around 100,000 fiber optic lights.
That's a lot.
But by the time we made it to the Executor, the Darth Vader ship, it actually had around 250,000. But the thing is, we came up with a trick where we made little brass buildings that went over them. They had etched holes. So we didn't have to drill all the little holes and put a fiber optics. They were just a product of the artwork that we shrank down and had etched into brass. So it was, when we said we had to make a bigger ship with more lights, there must have been groans without them throughout the model shop.
Wasn't one of the original plans that got scrapped is that you were just going to take a regular Star Destroyer and paint it black? But that couldn't work out properly in the production layout.
You know that story?
Yeah, I do.
Amazing.
You talk about it in some of the bonus material.
Oh, I did. Yeah.
I have your book.
Yeah, the thing was that they said, well, just paint it blue, the gray blue, and it'll be Darth Vader's ship, and then change it back to white later on, and it'll be cheaper. And they didn't think that all those little fiber optics would have to be scratched off or covered with who knows what. It was just impossible. And then all the scribe lines and all it would have taken forever.
It was impractical.
It was actually easier to have them design, and because of that, we got the unique look of the Super Star Destroyer.
That was when I guess George and Joe Johnston and George talked. And they must have said, well, if we have the chance now, let's actually make it different rather than just blue. You know? And which was when you look back on it, you think, why would you make any other choice? I'm
going to ask you a really nerdy question. Executor or Executor? Because they mean two different things.
We just called it Darth Vader's Star Destroyer. We didn't. It was only after the movie came out.
Right, they name all the things with the toys.
Slave 1 didn't used to be Slave 1. It was just, Boba Fett's ship.
Right.
Slave 1 was the result of a contest, a name contest. Remember that?
I don't remember. But,
well, they had a contest inside the company, and they said, we need a unique name. And everybody submitted names, and after about a week or so, they picked it out, and Slave 1 was the winner.
Very cool. I remember seeing in some of the bonus material, again, I watched a lot of it, when working on Jedi, it was kind of like the punishment or the timeout corner to go work on the second Death Star. Everyone just kind of kept adding to it and adding to it. Do you remember those days of just like the meticulous hours putting that together?
A lot of hours, and the actual schedule got cut in half. And so we had to double our efforts to get it.
So the uncompleted Death Star was uncompleted?
No, it was uncompleted on purpose.
It was supposed to look like that.
But the whole movie itself got cut in half as far as the time frame, and it was just a huge amount of work.
Yeah.
And it was tough.
Yeah.
We got it done.
Now, you worked on these things for so long. I mean, there's this really amazing, somewhat famous photo of you doing the 1977 special edition where you recreated the sand crawler for some of the new shots, and the sand crawler and the ground look real, and you're just this giant over
it. Yeah, because the original one, the original New Hope, we did out in the desert. You know, we dug a hole in the sand and got the camera really low, and then there was a little escarpment that the thing came over the top, and we'd have long brushes for getting rid of the tracks to go back and do it again and again. But the decision was to just do it on top of the roof of the building, and so it meant carving those hills and everything. And we were really lucky that there just happened to be really striated clouds that day, and it really helped to add to the scale. The sun was just right, but and it got it was actually a much more dynamic shot coming closer to the camera like that, you know. I liked the first one too, but there was one of the shots, the remake, that I thought was so successful, remake.
And the reason we did a lot of shots on the roof is that we had no phone poles visible at that height. So we'd get a clear sky.
Or really tall palm trees. Now, people are sometimes surprised by this, but episode 1, 2, and 3 have a lot of model making in it. What would you say is probably one of the biggest things from the prequel trilogy that people don't expect to be real, and it's actually a real model, not computer graphics?
Well, there's a shot of
Mustafar,
the guy in the orange pod racer.
Gasgango?
Sebulba.
Sebulba.
Right. When his engines come apart, and that's actually a model on a set.
Okay.
And then they put digital Sebulba in it.
Right. Cool.
Yeah, it was sometimes CG crashes were better. I really kind of had doubts when they talked about doing the CG crash, but there was a guy named Habib Zagapur, and he programmed it from looking at old footage of Formula One cars exploding, and he did an amazing job. And I remember I was doubtful. I thought, no, we should do it as a model. We'll have it behind a car. We'll eject it off into the dirt. You know, roll, fall apart. But the decision, sometimes the decision doesn't go your way, it goes somewhere else.
Well, John Knoll and Dennis Muir were the effect supervisors, and they would use practical and digital based on what was the most efficient. And so that makes sense.
And people don't expect, I mean, in Attack of the Clones, the Jedi library, where the librarian works, that's actually a model set that they went and photographed and make it look big, and they blow up Ewan McGregor or shrink him down and put him in there. Are there any other sets you can remember that were just models?
Well, all of the Geonosian arena, where Princess is out there on that column and gets her midriff ripped off and all that kind of stuff.
The stadium all the way around?
The stadium was about as big as the area that it's about, say, 20 feet in diameter and about 14, 15 feet high, and it's like a big donut. And you could pull pie sections out of the donut.
Oh, so you can get the camera in there?
Get cameras in.
I didn't know that.
That kind of thing. But
that's really cool.
It was a very, very successful model. And but Mustafar also was really big. It was about 2/3 the size of a tennis court.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was big.
Holy cow.
And it was like off the ground about 8 feet, and then the hills were maybe another 8 feet above that.
Cool set.
And
so when you're building that set, are you just picturing the little Anakin and Obi-Wan kind of fighting through it?
Well, we thought of that. I remember one of the guys started to make these kind of bridges, and I said, the Geonosians never make cute bridges. Just nothing.
You have to get into the head of a Geonosian.
Yeah, the Geonosian would never make anything cute. So all the little arch bridges are out. No arch bridges.
Very cool.
Because there were certainly times when we used X-Acto knives 1,000 times, a million times, but when we did the Geonosian arena, we used machetes, sharpened machetes. And then eventually knives and little chisels and things like that.
Lorne was our resident expert at organic rocks and fantastic work. All that you've seen in the movies, Lorne's been in charge of.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, before we go, I just want to give a shout out to the role that you actually play in the Star Wars films. It's a very iconic role. Do you remember your trip down to South America?
Oh, sure. To Tikal. I've even revisited that. The Guatemalans invited us down about 7 years ago or something like that. We went to the top of the pyramids. They wanted all the same shot of me standing there with the helmet.
And the little trash can.
Yeah, we didn't do the trash can. That was too dangerous.
You had 2 light meters, right? It was 2 light meters, and you just taped it around. And so
you know all the stories.
Oh, I know.
You can tell them.
So the shot in episode 4 where they come in, they're landing on Yavin 4, and there's the rebel trooper there, and he kind of like holds out 2 film light meters. There's only 4 of you that flew down, right?
3.
3. Jeez,
and I was
small crew.
I was the one in the tower because I was the only one that didn't have children. And the 2 other guys did.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us.
All right, thank you.